And welcome to the Pompey Politics Podcast. If you're listening along live, it's Sunday, the 18th of May, and you are listening to the podcast where we discuss matters of local, national, and international political importance, but do them in a balanced, reasonable, and gentle way to get to the heart of the matter. I'm Ian Tiny Morris.
And I'm Simon Sansbury. Good evening and welcome. So, how was your sunny Sunday, Ian?
It's a beautiful day out there, and to be honest, it's been lovely. Last week I ran in my cricket kit and presented, but at least this week I played yesterday. So it was halfway up country. So it's been a quiet day today, and we turn this week from matters of national importance to back into the heart of Portsmouth.
We do indeed. It may not be an island of strangers, but on Tuesday we were an island of strangeness.
Yes.
So how exactly does one make a mayor? And does it involve cloning technology, some sort of mould, splicing of DNA? So yes, Tuesday was the mayor making ceremony and Portsmouth City Council's AGM. And yes, so amongst the plethora of international guests to witness the mayor making, Portsmouth's answer to pomp and ceremony as the mantle or the mace and ceremonial robes were handed over from Jason Frizzackley to Gerald Vernon Jackson. The mayor was appointed, as they normally are, chosen at a previously conducted secret ballot of the city's councillors. But the most notable thing this year was that the PIP councillors didn't join the other councillor members on stage, instead choosing to take seats in the audience. Also, PS, Portsmouth City Council's website hasn't been updated yet. It's still showing last year's mayor. Sorry, guys. But watching on, among the thousands of the great and the good or just available on a weekday in Portsmouth were significant dignitaries. We had Andrew Kelly from Rhode Island, Portsmouth, which is one of the three Portsmouths in the US that have a relationship with the city. We had the Deputy Mayor of Duisburg. We had Councillor Morgan Tellisberg from Caen, who's the councillor in charge of ceremony. We also had Mr. Michael Betts, who's from the Falkland Islands, which is one of our sister cities, and also making a contribution at the AGM was the Mayor of Valletta. The Mayor of Valletta Malta, Olaf Mackie, who currently the city are in discussions with, also to have a sister city partnership with. So. Yes. So what was the issue about the 9-all? So recently, two councillors had previously been suspended from Portsmouth Labour Group. Those were councillors Judith Smythe in St Jude and Rajesh Ghosh from Charles Dickens, were welcomed back into the Labour fold, with the party concluding that there was no case to answer, and welcoming them back with open arms. This took the Labour Party to 9 councillors, the same as Portsmouth Independents Party on 9 councillors, Conservatives on 4, and the remaining Independent on 1. The Lib Dems, the administration, even though it was a minority administration, at 19. So what does happen when you've got 2 parties vying for the number 2 spot?
Yes. And I think that's a question that we didn't know the answer to.
No.
So we thought, rather than perhaps us blather on for an hour, scratching our heads and trying to work out what should have, we spoke to Portsmouth Independents Party, and we spoke to Labour, and we kind of asked them for their perspective. And we haven't got them live with us, but we've been putting in a shift this week, haven't we, Simon? This will be our 3rd recording of the week.
Yeah, indeed. There have been many times at the microphone this week. So just before I get into our first video, just do remember, if you please do comment along, like, follow, subscribe, do remember to subscribe, hit that notification bell on YouTube. Facebook are now doing this thing where live videos aren't actually remaining on their platform for more than a month. So if you want to keep looking back over our history, you're best to actually follow us on YouTube, but do still keep those comments coming. So what exactly does happen when you've got two groups that have the same number of councillors that are vying for the leader of the opposition? We asked George.
Yeah, so I mean, for starters, it is constitutional chaos. Now, some councils, I guess, who may have been in this predicament before, have put into their constitution a framework to decide exactly what happens in this incident. However, Portsmouth City Council it's a complete omission on their part that they have no structure whatsoever in this circumstance. So yeah, constitutional chaos is what happens. We were approached by the chief executive officer just over a week ago and basically said to us, this is the situation. One of you have got to be leader. One of you have not got to be. Over to you. Like, let us know what's going to happen, which is obviously ridiculous in itself because you're never going to get two group leaders of parties both being like, yeah, cool, take it. It's a real weird situation to put us in. And how do you measure who's meant to be the leader of the opposition? So we did some research and we spoke to the LGA and stuff like that. And first and foremost, there needs to be a constitutional review in Portsmouth. I mean, the fact that this is not in our constitution is appalling. There was meant to be a constitutional review working group a couple of years ago. Nothing ever happened. Nothing ever has been updated. That's the first and foremost step because, we live in a democracy and it should be democratic and there should be a method rather than just leaving it to a few individuals, their opinions. So that's the first thing. So I guess we went away and looked at other councils and took advice, and different councils do different things. Some of them say, well, if you're on equal numbers, you're both leaders of the opposition. You share responsibilities, you share the title, and you take the turns at either second in minutes or you do things together, etc. Some councils say, well, whoever won the last popular vote, so whoever got most votes in the last election, they get it. Some of them say whoever won the most seats. Some councils have the first in, last out. So whoever's the first leader of the opposition stays in that place until they leave. There's lots of different processes that you could look at. However, it appeared that our council's lead officers, shall we say, wanted to kind of take the approach of, well, either you and Labour agree, or we're going to flip a coin, or pick a name of a hat, or draw a straw, which is something that myself and Labour were completely against in all capacity because it's outrageous.
And is that really the only options that were left? Because obviously, I was slightly flabbergasted because, I guess. It would have felt, again, many different ways, but it would have felt a bit more democratic if those who were not Labour and Lib Dem or PIP effectively got a say as to who they wanted to represent them in opposition. Because obviously there's still some Tory councillors and some non-aligned independents, but they didn't fancy going down that route.
Well, I mean, that was one of the main suggestions that both myself and Charlotte made, is that maybe the leader of the opposition should be chosen by the opposition councillors. One of the suggestions was letting all councillors vote, which I think is a bit strange. I don't think the administration should ever vote for who they want to lead the opposition. Equally, I don't think the opposition should ever necessarily vote for whoever they want the administration to be, in a sense, once they're in the administration. It's a really weird position, that is. But yeah, you're right, Ian. Why shouldn't you let all the opposition councillors have a vote on who they want to lead them? That might not end up being me or Charlotte. It could be somebody else. But why is that? Why is that not a democratic vote? You're completely correct. Both myself and Charlotte approached the officers about this, and I spoke to Peter Balfe, personally, who's the monitoring officer of Portsmouth City Council, and he straight away, nope, not doing it, not happening, wasn't even a negotiation. Since that time, more recently, I know the Conservatives have come out and said that they believe under Rule 12, I think it is, of the Constitution, that there is framework for this place, because when you do have people on even numbers, there should be a vote to determine it. But it seemed like it was either get this sorted by the AGM. We had a deadline. This is the thing that's really annoying as well. We had a deadline of the AGM. It was like, this has to be sorted in 7 days or 10 days, whatever it was. If it ain't done by the AGM, if it isn't being democratic, we're drawing a straw straight after the meeting. or picking a name from the hat, whatever they want to choose. It's outrageous. Honestly, it's outrageous. It's crazy that was the fallback.
Which I mean, it sounds like it isn't something that's happened before. Otherwise, it probably would be in the constitution. But if there's like about 15 different other ways you could do it that are some sort of pseudo mechanism, like the popular vote or the most recent, the largest number of councillors returned at the most recent election, or who's been, all of those sorts of things. Those are all different ways to cut that onion, aren't they? But at the end of the day, maybe the simplest thing is, if it's a tie, it comes down to a vote of the members, which is the councillors. Because
also, I think so basically what happened was, in the interim, is me and Charlotte had a discussion, and look, I saw the way it was going. It was, we think we have it because of this, you think you have it because of this, blah blah blah. Never the twain shall meet. And for me, it was becoming just an unnecessary stress. I mean, what does being the leader of the opposition actually even mean? I mean, we can go through that on a separate thing, but like, she really, really wanted to be the leader of the opposition. I've been it for a year. I didn't want a council to break out into absolute chaos, which it would have done. And I didn't want a 50-50 flick of the problem is, right, if you take the 50-50 option, if that's what happened, if you picked a name out of a hat or drew a straw, you've almost accepted that that's what you're happy with. And what we are being told is, whatever happens in this situation, that will be used as the democratic framework for moving forward. So if we literally sat there and said, okay, we're happy with a 50-50 coin flip, that is what would set the precedent for every instance of this moving forward in our council. I wasn't happy to accept that as a thing that was going to be moving forward. So I basically sat and spoke with Charlotte. I spoke to the monitoring officer, and I basically said, look, if you guys can agree, as in the council, if the council can agree to review the whole constitution in relation to opposition leaders between now and the July full council meeting, and you put something through gas, you scrutinise it, you debate it, it goes through gas, goes through full council for a vote, I'll step aside. I'll let Charlotte take the reins for a couple of months to save all this absolute craziness. As I said, I didn't want the coin flip or the straw picking to go ahead, because I didn't want that to be the president moving forward, because that's crazy. So I thought, well, let me step down, resolves the problem for now temporarily, and it gives the council then 2.5 months, 3 months to now come up with a real sensible framework and constitution that they can implement moving forward. And that's what they have agreed to do. And I don't know if you've seen the news article this week, but obviously that the council have already stated that it will be going before July 2025. And I was happy with that, because I thought, well, at least there'll be improvements or things moving forward, which is good. But what I will say, though, is that after I made that decision, we had Epsom and Ewell Council, the leader, Councillor Hannah Dalton, who's a lead PIP of the LGA. She contacted me, and they actually have exactly the same problem. And what she said is, what they did in their council was that both people become leaders of the opposition. So she said is that the default position is that if the council doesn't have a constitutional outline in it, both people become the leader of the opposition until such time there is a constitutional change. Right. But as I say, by the time we got that advice and that guidance, I had already agreed to the terms. So I just let's let it play out.
So what does that mean, George, practically for you for the next sort of month or next couple of months? Is it simply that you have less meetings to attend, or is there actually any tangible impact, or is?
Yeah, so for me, my main concern was that when you're the leader of the opposition of a council, you get access to a local government association group, which meet every single month. And that's really, really useful. It's nothing that you get through Portsmouth City Council. It's purely an external service. But to qualify for that, you have to be a leader of the opposition or a leader of the council. You can't just be a group leader. Yeah. And in that meeting, you meet up with all the other leaders and opposition leaders across the country, and with all the executive body of the LGA. And they tell you such useful things, like things that have recently been sent out to chief executives, things that the government ministers are planning to do, and a kind of information that probably the leader of the council is privy to, or the chief executive is privy to, but certainly something that I don't have access to. So that is the most valuable part of being a leader of the opposition. And trust me, that's come in very handy over the last year a few times now. for reasons I shan't discuss on this call. But it's come in very handy a few times. So that was my main concern. So before I decided to step down, I spoke with the LGA, and after about a week, they came back and they agreed to allow me to stay on it. Because obviously they've said, well, you've still got equal numbers, so blah 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 blah. So they've allowed me to stay on it, and that was my main concern. And that's why I was okay about standing down temporarily and letting Charlotte do it, because the main thing that I have access to, I will still have access to. The other things is a pay cut. I mean, the leader of the opposition is paid quite a chunk of money, remuneration. I mean, say quite a chunk, it makes it sound like a fortune. We're paid like an extra, I think it's £3,000 more than what you'd get on a chair position, scrutiny chair position or whatever. So obviously you take a pay cut, and other than that, you second the minutes. You speak on behalf of the opposition on sometimes, but obviously that means that Charlotte will now have to consult with me and Simon rather than me consulting with Charlotte and Simon. So it's the same thing, really. It's just who is the name on that document, if that makes sense.
Well, again, all seems it all seems slightly bizarre, and I guess it has calmed everything down, and hopefully by the time we come back in July, there's something more tangible, and I'm hoping it's better than a best of five rock paper scissors stone, but who knows?
Look, at the end of the day, as you know, guys, I'm quite a controversial person. I'll always sit there and have an argument where there's an argument to be had. But everything I always do is for the benefit of the city and for the benefit of the people, regardless whether you agree with what I do or disagree with what I do. The intent I always have is for the benefit of the city. And for me, it was like, am I going to benefit the city by bringing the council into an absolute uproar and things like that? And Charlotte really wanted it. She did. She really, really wanted it. It meant a lot to her. I think, that was a position that she had always wanted to get. And obviously it went from Simon straight to me and it missed her. And she always kind of had the numbers. It's just a lot of her members beyond her control was suspended or left or whatever from Labour. So she's always kind of been there, but never got across the line. So, if you think about it from a fairness aspect, Labour did receive the most votes in the city, or second most votes in the city last year, and the most votes in the city the year before. She's never been the leader of the opposition. Me and Simon both have. So let her have a go for a while and let's see how she does. But, I'll be keeping her feet to the fire as well as Steve's now. It's not going to be just an easy ride.
Don't think anyone who knows you, George, would expect anything less. So I guess seeing as we've got you on, are there any other key developments out of Tuesday or anything you want to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I can share a few things. I mean, our group decided not to attend mayor making in an official capacity. I know that a lot of people are talking about this on social media. We were there. We did attend. We sat in the crowd amongst the members of the public. But for us, the Lord Mayor position and the process of how it's selected and who's selected for us has become watered down and weakened.
So what is
Almost
what is the
political now.
process of how it's selected? Because most people probably don't understand
Oh,
how
it's a
that
bunch
works.
it's a bunch of rubbish, Simon. So basically, the honestly, it drives me insane. It's the Lord Mayor is meant to be an apolitical position, right? And I've got to give kudos to Councillor Fazackley, who's just been the Lord Mayor, and Tom Coles before that, and Hugh Mason before that. Always remained impartial, and I'm sure that Gerald, I hope, will do the same in his term now. However, the position's meant to be apolitical. It's meant to be based on merit, on experience, on value, on all these other things. And it's not meant to be political.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, for the last few years now, it has been political on the choosing of the Lord Mayor. And what happens is it's all secret. It's all done in secret. And that's, guys, I'm not a fan of this whole secret behind backdoor stuff. I don't like it. There's a lot of these meetings that happen that I don't even attend before they're going to public because I don't agree with having meetings and trying to do things before. But basically what happens at the end of the budget meeting in February every year, we go into a closed session right at the end. And whoever wants to put themselves forward as Lord Mayor or Deputy Lord Mayor, should I say, nominates themselves forward. And then if there's two or more people, they have a blind ballot. So no one knows who votes for who. It's completely secret and completely blinded. And people are meant to have a free vote and meant to be able to vote who they want to and who is right for the job. all sounds nice and fair, but realistically, that's not what happens. Deals happen in back rooms and things like that. And literally in this case, it did happen in a back room. So what happened on this occasion, I'll probably get my hand slapped for telling you this, but what happened on this occasion is Councillor Simpson, Russell Simpson, has gone for Lord Mayor or Deputy Lord Mayor 3 years in a row now. And he didn't even want it originally. He didn't even want the position. It was Councillor Vernon Jackson who pushed him into standing because they didn't have anyone else to put up in the Liberals at the time. And basically, things happen. I'm not going to get into that. Things happen, and they decided to not allow Russell to get it. And that's been going on for a few years now. And this year was much of the same. We knew we had the votes going into there. We actually said that we approached Yinka Adeniran, Councillor Yinka Adeniran, because Russell didn't have a consort like a deputy mayoress that he wanted, like from his personal life. So he approached Yinka and said, "Should we do this as a united ticket and do it together?" And Yinka went away, come back and said, "Yeah, absolutely, I'll accept that. I'm really happy to do that." Blah 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 blah. And going into that meeting, we knew we kind of were probably going to finally get the position. We didn't want it kind of to be political. We wanted it to be cross-party, us and Labour have a go. And anyway, we broke out into a closed session during the budget, if you guys remember. And we were going back into the chamber. And as we went back into the chamber, one of the Labour councillors pulled me to the side and said, "Just so you know, Liberals have approached us. They're going to offer Yinka the position now of Deputy Mayoress, and we've discussed other things, and now we're going to vote for Liberal." So all of a sudden, it got taken off of Councillor Simpson again. Not sure what was agreed between them. Not sure what was offered between them. And it's just a shame. It's just a saying, and everyone's kind of whipped to vote for Kadir. We do know that there was two Liberals that voted for Russell Simpson, which is really appreciated. I'm not going to name them; it's not appropriate. We know two Liberals did. We know also one Labour member did as well, which is really appreciated because they were not happy with the situation. But it is what it is, and that's what happens. And then that's when you then go to mayor making, and it's all public. And you guys, as the residents of Portsmouth, think it's public that you're going on stage and do you nominate so and so. But it's all been agreed in advance. I don't like that. It's just rubbish. And we decided that enough was enough. We love Councillor Vernon Jackson. He's been an absolute credit to our city for 20 odd years. Nothing debating that. Same with Councillor Kadir. Councillor Kadir is a really lovely guy, really, really good guy who's got a decent local business. It's nothing personal. We're not happy with the system. It's political nepotism. That's what it is. It's political nepotism. It's somebody getting a role because of the colour of the rosette, not because of the actions they've taken. And a line was crossed, and we just said, "Look, we're not going to get on stage and play a part of this pantomime. We're just not." But equally, we didn't go there and protest or hold up a sign or do anything like that. We just sat in the audience, made our piece, and that was that. But we just didn't want to take part of it anymore. Sorry for the long answer, but that's what happens. I'm definitely going to get my wrist slapped for that one.
Well, we won't provide any evidence. Outside of that, you've had a bit of a busy week. You've had the announcement of Joe Standen, previously Conservative candidate in Baffinge, joining PIP. You've had John Smith, previous councillor in Eastleigh and Craneswater for the Conservatives, joining PIP. Is there more to come? What's the attraction?
Do you know what? Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. Who knows? Look, over the years, we get approached by a lot of councillors, current councillors, former councillors. They approach us because we're not one of the main three parties. And I think if somebody becomes disenfranchised with their party, we are the best secondary option. And if people really care about the local residents and local people, and they don't have this desire to become MPs or whatever, because realistically, a Portsmouth Independent Party councillor is very unlikely to become an MP or to become the Prime Minister. It's not going to happen. So if you genuinely only care about Portsmouth and that's your focus, then we're a good option. And over the years, we've had several people. So Councillor John Smith, for example, was going to join us whilst he was a councillor. And he met up with us and we were very close to doing the paperwork. And I respect him for this. He approached me and said, at the end, before coming across to us back then, he approached me and said, "Look, George, I'm a man of my word. I said I'd stand for Conservatives. I won as a Conservative. I've decided I'm not going to go to you guys until I've done with my concern with Conservatives. And I was like, fair enough. I respect that. I really do respect that. I thought, good on you. We also had a Liberal just a couple of months ago ask about crossing the floor to us, and I made a big mistake by saying, go and speak to your party and let them know first, because I don't like this backhanded stuff, you know? And that person spoke to the party and they've stayed in Liberals now. So maybe that was a mistake on my part. But, you know, it's we do get people approach us. I think people struggle with me often, not because they don't like me, but because I am controversial. And I think that sometimes, you know, our councillors do get stick off the back of what I say. But, you know, we are independent. We can say what we want. And I respect my councillors' ability to say what they want and do what they want, like they respect my ability to do what they say what they want. But you know, there is a couple more names that we are hoping to announce very imminently. Who they are or what they are is a different conversation. And I hope I do get the pleasure of announcing them within the next day or two. But we shall see. We shall see. But there is a consistent line now going to be probably coming up over the next several months that we'll be announcing. We just started with Joe and John because they've been around us for several months now. They're not like people that have just approached a week or two. This has been people that have approached months, thought about it, you know. And I said to both of those, the same as I say to everyone else, I said to both of them, go and speak to your local party. So I know Joe, when they spoke to, I'm not going to name names, it's unprofessional, but they went to go and speak to some of the senior people of his party, and they understood and were supportive of his decision and stuff. And I think that's a real nice, fairer way of doing it. So they've been around the block a few months now, and to say we've decided to announce now, and we'll see if there's another one or two in the next few days. We'll see.
Very cryptic. We will.
And
you
also,
know, Simon and I never.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah, never. So you know, Simon and I never do predictions. So, or
well,
if we do, we get them wrong. So we'll
we
just.
do, and one of us is mildly better at them than the other one. But
stop
you know, it's not like we're keeping score. But yeah, and also, what happens to the whole argument about 9-all if you suddenly gain a councillor from someone else? Does that then reopen that, or?
Yeah, I mean, if we gain a councillor, I mean, Charlotte will still be the opposition leader currently, but then what would happen in July is that I would then become leader of the opposition again, at the next meeting. But regardless of whether that happens or not, and you never know, Charlotte might get Cal back. You know, they might get Labour might bring Cal back. Probably unlikely, but you never know. But what I'm saying is, if either of us go 10-9, I still want the constitutional review to happen, because it's important that it happens for any future purposes. Yeah. But look, as I say to a lot of my guys who can be quite excited about potential persons coming across, that it's not done until it's done. You know, let's just wait. You know,
sounds like recent experience has definitely proved that to be the case.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, the clear point for me is I don't want animosity. Like, we're all local politicians. We're not paid a big salary to do this. We volunteer for the most part and get a little bit of remuneration for our woes. But, you know, it's not worth ruining decade-long friendship or family ties just because you want to move across to a party. I always say, and you've got to think about the residents. The residents voted for you off the back of a ticket. Sometimes residents don't even know the names of the councillors. They just know they've got party councillor, you know? So I always think you've got to be respectful to the people that voted you in and to your friends and family and stuff. And if you've looked at all that and you've decided that and you've gone to speak to your current party and you said, I'm not happy, this is what I'm thinking of doing, and the party still can't resolve your issues, then okay, fair enough, look at moving across. And I always have that approach, because I would hope and appreciate if one of my guys ever decides to join a national party, that they would give me the same respect and say, George, you know, we're not happy with this, you know, and give me the opportunity. And that's why I want to afford that to the other national parties, that their members come to them and say, I'm not happy, and try and resolve it before crossing the floor, you know? There's more to life than local politics, is what I'm trying to say.
More to life than local politics.
Well, so they say. Well, there's plenty in there, isn't there? 9-all, and the best they could offer was flip a coin. That seems quite a gap in the process, doesn't it?
Well, it does, but it is the method used if in an election there's two candidates with precisely the same number of votes. So it in itself, it has record, but the fact that it's not on the books just because no one thought it would ever happen is quite clearly an oversight.
So I think there's plenty in there for us to sort of kick around, but I guess as you know, we are the bastions of balance and fairness and reasonableness. Did we want to have a listen to Graham first before we kick all that around?
Let's listen to Graham just as I line Graham's video up. I'm going to say hi to Mike from Ontario because he's put a comment, but there we go. Here's Graham. There isn't a process to deal with what happens when you've got 9. Why is that?
Well, I suppose in part it's because nobody thought about that situation when standing orders and the Constitution were written. But also we did embark on a constitutional review as a result of a council motion. But because of all the changes that are going on local government, it's effectively been abandoned. So we've not really done work on this. I mean, I picked up a few things that we should change because although they appear in the Constitution, we don't actually do them. So why are they there? And there are a few other things members have picked up, but we got some way through the review, but then there's no point as there's going to be a new council, particularly informed later on. What we are going to do is the Governance Audit and Standards Committee are going to look at a process for deciding this, because I suppose you could do it a number of ways. One is you could toss a coin. That doesn't seem particularly fair. I don't think anybody thought that was a good idea to decide what the opposition group. You could have a voting council, but the administration don't fancy the idea of choosing who are the official opposition, which I can understand. And there's another way of doing it, which would be effectively to look at the number of votes that each of the councillors in each group has got over a 3-year electoral cycle, of course, and then add those up, and whichever group ends up with the largest number of votes becomes the official opposition on the basis of equal number of councillors, because that takes it out of the favouritism bit and the gamble of a toss of a coin, but it has some reality because it's based on what people actually do vote for in terms of the councillors. So that's probably something that will go to the government representatives for the process to decide that, and they'll have to agree it, and then we'll come back and we'll agree whether we want to do that, unless somebody comes up with a better idea.
Well,
I guess one thing that perplexed us, Graham, is it seemed fairly logical that as the leader of the opposition represents all of the opposition councillors, and I think there are 4 groups represented. Obviously, it wouldn't be fair for the Lib Dems to vote for who they wanted the leader of the opposition to be, but all of the opposition councillors getting a choice seemed to us like a sensible way of doing things. And I know there was something put forward citing Article 12 that could be done, and was then, well, it's not an elected position, but did that not sound like reasonable and good sense?
Well, it might have been, but none of the groups seemed to want to go down that route. I mean, there was a fairly amicable agreement at the end about what people wanted to do. We were going to put someone forward for another position. George Madgwick wanted that position, so we said, well, okay, well, if we'll withdraw that, and he said, well, okay, then we'll agree to be. You can be the official opposition. So there was an amicable agreement at the end of it. Slightly unusual, but yes, there was.
So I guess, for the moment, up until July and possibly beyond July, depending on the outcome, Charlotte is the official leader of the opposition, and Labour, will be the voice of opposition to the administration. What are Labour's priorities for at least the next couple of months and possibly beyond?
Well, in a sense, just to go back to the point about the leader of the opposition, it's not quite like Parliament in the sense that even in Parliament, all the opposition groups have the opportunity to oppose. They can, and the opposition group is obviously the biggest opposition group. That's really all it is. There is a bit of a difference in balances between the leader of the opposition group and the smaller parties, but apart from that, constitutionally, it probably doesn't make an awful lot. It does make a lot of difference, but in terms of what we would do, our approach has always been to where we think the Liberal Democrats are doing the right thing, we will cooperate. We obviously work with them on the budget. We negotiate about things we think are important. We will continue to do that. If we think they're not doing things that should be done, we'll ask them to include them in the budget. Sometimes they agree to do that, sometimes they don't. So we'll work as a constructive opposition in that respect. I mean, previously, for example, we had some issues around new play areas where the council when said, well, we're going to put new play areas, it's going to be really nice, da, 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 whatever, great. The trouble was when parents took their kids to them, some of the equipment wasn't age appropriate for younger children. And they said, well, what's the point? Because younger children can't use this. And they missed out on a bit of consultation. So we did, follow that up and that. So we'll be trying to make sure that there's proper consultation on things that are changed, things like that. Similarly, we'll also want to get the council to make sure that it does what it says it does. So, for example, we have scrutiny reviews and recommendations, and what we will be doing is asking for, well, what's happened to those recommendations, and has the council done what they said they would do, or have they not done some? And if they haven't done some, why haven't they not done some? So it's about keeping a track on when scrutiny panels report and ask the administration to do things. So we'll be taking a lead on those sorts of things.
Okay, yeah, there's plenty of things in full council that are, yes, we'll bring a report back or we'll do X, Y, Z, and that's the bit where you try to kind of join up that circle, is it, of the, well, what did happen with that?
Yes, yeah. So, for example, if a scrutiny panel, we just had one recently talking about street litter and fly tipping, and so there's some recommendations will now go to the cabinet. The cabinet may well agree on those. So then probably 6 months or a year later, we'll probably say, okay, so what's happened? Have they actually done those? And they might say, no, we're not going to do one of those recommendations. So when we come to look at all of them, we'll say, well, you said you weren't going to do that one. Why did you decide not to do that one? What was the reason? And find out.
Okay, so overall, I mean, the Lib Dems, they've been in administration since 2018.
Yes, yeah.
So, and they've been a minority administration. So, what report card would you give them of their stewardship so far as the administration?
I could be quite cheeky and say, could do better. I mean, to be honest, I mean, a lot of things that administration do, we are quite happy with and we agree with. Things around spending on social care, their budgetary approach, generally, we agree with the way they allocate budgets and what they do. We don't always, but we generally do. But there are certainly areas where we think they could do better. One of the ones we've focused on quite a bit is recycling. While they've introduced things like food waste recycling, which is really good, the general recycling rates for Portsmouth have not been good and have been fairly stagnant. Small improvements, very small percentage improvements on recycling. And I've said before, and we pursued this over a couple of years, about I'd really want to know why we aren't doing as well as other urban places, other cities of similar type, Plymouth, Derby, Nottingham, whatever. And what can we do? Now, obviously, the government is making some changes to the way recycling is going to be implemented, trying to make it simpler and try to make it make more people do it, or to get more stuff recycled. Sorry. So obviously, they may not want to do something like now, which would possibly contradict or maybe conflict with what's being proposed. But we could do with a bit more ambition, really, because it is an issue I think that's important. I suppose the other issue that's important is around attainment of pupils. The GCSEs, A levels. It's rather paradoxical that we seem to have good results from Ofsted for our schools. They're often rated as good, but the attainment levels, the exam results, are often not as one would expect. Now, it's obviously not an easy problem to solve, but I think there could be some value in maybe a scrutiny panel having a look at this and trying to get to the bottom of what's gone on here. Because if you go to places like London, I mean, they had a bit of an issue in London, obviously, around this, and they did this thing called the London Challenge. I mean, I'm not an education expert in terms of schools, but I did really know a bit about this. And that made quite a dramatic impact on attainment. And I'm just wondering, are there lessons you could learn from that? I mean, you can't obviously replicate directly necessarily from London, but, what can we do? Because it's important for young people that they are able to progress in work, in life. And if they aren't getting good results at qualification level, that's often a bit of a handicap. So it's quite an important issue. So maybe we could try and do a bit more there. So could do better.
Fabulous. Thank you, Graham. I guess if we go back to as well as the AGM and the election of the or not the election, the selection of the leader of the opposition. It was also the mayor making ceremony, and it would be fair to say that it did not pass off without incident with the PIP councillors not taking to the stage. How did you view kind of what went on and possibly the story behind the story?
Well, I'll be quite honest. I thought it was a rather petty and childish gesture to make, because the mayor making ceremony is designed to welcome the new Lord Mayor and to affirm our vote and support for the Lord Mayor in their work over the year. And to be absent from that is effectively a snub. The issue was at the meeting in February, when we normally select candidates for Lord Mayor and Deputy Lord Mayor, which will be the Lord Mayor the following year. Gerald Ronan Jackson was already the deputy there. And unless that person either decides not to do it, and we've had one do that, you would normally effectively just vote rubber stamp the person, because obviously you've selected them and there's no reason not to. So you would, but the Deputy Lord Mayor is the new person, the Lord Mayor the next year. The Liberal Democrats put forward Councillor Abdul Qadir, and the Portsmouth Independents Party put forward Councillor Russell Simpson. So there was a vote because there was a contest. Yes. And Councillor Simpson was not selected. Councillor Qadir was. They were unhappy about it. I understand. Well, yeah, okay. But being Lord Mayor is not a right; it's a privilege. No member or no party has a right to be the Lord Mayor. It's a privilege, and requires, obviously, you to garner support from across the board, if you like, if you want to do that. So apparently they made the decision that because Councillor Russell Simpson, they were going to boycott the ceremony. Now, as I said earlier, I think that's both petty and childish. We were honouring Alan Knight for Freedom of the City, which I think was fantastic. And not to be there is I think it is a snub, and I don't think we should behave like that. Just because you lose a vote, you don't get your way. You don't just throw your toys out the pram and walk out. It's just not the done thing, I think. And I think, given the importance of the civic ceremony, you shouldn't do that. So that's my view of it.
So over the last sort of 6-7 years, with the exception of Frank Jonas, it seems like the role has been mostly Liberal Democrats with the odd Labour. So has it become a political position, and was Tuesday more about the politicking of mayors rather than perhaps a snub?
I don't think so. You've obviously got to have candidates willing to do it, and we haven't always had, as a relatively small group, people willing to do the Lord Mayor role, because it is demanding, and you need. Yeah. You don't want to take this up lightly. It's quite hard work. It's a very responsible position. So some people don't want to do it, and I know there's one or two Lib Dems who I spoke to who wouldn't want to do it because they don't feel that it's the thing for them to do. But no, I don't think so. I think we've had periods when certain parties have candidates who are willing to do it, and we're happy to support them because we don't think there's any problem with that. But I think the problem is it'd be better if parties communicated a bit earlier about what their intentions are. So if a party has a candidate they're likely to put forward, if they told the other group leaders we're proposing to put X forward, that would probably help a bit more communication. But as I say, even if you think it's right, you can always have a go next year. So you don't, if you have your intention to put your name forward and you don't do it first year, you might well get it the next year. So I don't think it would help your case by doing something like that stunt of boycotting, because it does look like sour grapes, and it's not really something you should do.
No. Simon.
Okay, so we talked about kind of the local administration, obviously where now you're taking the reins of opposition. Obviously 10 months in of the Labour national government, what would your assessment be of their performance so far?
Difficult start, more to do would be my judgment. And it was a difficult start. If you think about what they inherited, the fiscal position, Jeremy Hunt basically brought in tax cuts, but also said there'll have to be austerity. I've just been reading an article in the New Statesman this week about George Osborne and his influence on the economic debate and how he still influences it. And it's a fascinating article. Obviously won't go into it now, but we were left with a real serious problem. The serious problems with the NHS, prisons, local government funding for years of austerity. I mean, the list is almost endless. So it was a hugely difficult situation. I don't think the Labour Party helped itself by hemming itself in during the campaign on taxes, because it was very obvious there were going to have to be some tax rises. So they probably would have been wiser not to hem themselves in with saying, whenever the Conservatives mentioned tax, oh, we're not going to put that up now, because there was inevitably going to have to be some tax rises. Positive things, I think increasing the minimum wage is good. The Employment Rights Bill is right. I mean, I've never understood why it seems to be right that you can unfairly dismiss somebody for 2 years, but after 2 years you can't. There's all sorts of other things around employment rights and why you can't have proper employment rights from day one. I don't think it's a disincentive to employment, and it seems to me that it's fair that you should not be unfairly dismissed from in the first year as in the third, fourth, fifth, sixth year. So that should be something you should challenge. They are beginning to bring waiting lists down. It's happening slowly, but it's a start, and I think we've had a record of that from the previous Labour government, 97 to 2010. I think the renationalisation of railways, bringing it under public control and making it a more coordinated system is a good start. I suppose with a lot of these things, the actual impact of all of this is going to be felt much further down the line, and we have to hope that the impact of this will be felt much further down the line. There's obviously the housing reform of the Renters' Rights Bill, which is actually picking up some of the stuff that Michael Gove wanted to do, but they seem to drop it because of lots of lobbying before the last government lost its position. So reintroducing some of that, so that will have some real impacts. The problem is going to be the economy. Obviously, raising national insurance when you want to create jobs is potentially problematic. We'll have to see what the impact of that will be. We've seen a bit of a good thing in economic figures for the first 3 months, but of course it hasn't taken into account anything that's coming in terms of tax rises. And then of course we have Mr. Trump, who is throwing all sorts of stuff around, which is going to make world trading more difficult. So I think a difficult start, much more to do is where we are, and the test will be whether a Labour government can show that it's achieved enough to warrant a return to government.
I guess the fundamental question for me, Graham, is obviously there have been some things like the winter fuel allowance, which wasn't in the manifesto, and I think we'd all acknowledge that has been hugely unpopular. And there have been certain things. We spoke with the WASPy women last week, and obviously that looked like a commitment that hasn't come to fruition. But the self-imposed fiscal rules and the commitment on tax, there was quite a narrative around it was much worse than we expected, and we won't 22 or however many billion black hole. But I guess the bit that us commentators look at and think, I don't understand why they seem to be sticking to some fairly fiscally conservative rules of their own making. And it feels like the electorate haven't got the change they thought they were going to get. Is that a fair statement?
I think there is impatience for change, and of course any government coming in to create real change does take time. I mean, it took us 3 years, I think, from 1997 to really bring waiting lists down significantly. So you didn't feel the effect of that for 3 years when they really started to come down and make an impact. And from my own sort of background as a both historian and political scientist, that you studying what governments do, it does take time to make things happen. The problem with fiscal rules is politicians believe they have to create a sense for the market that they are being responsible. The trouble is, it's not always clear that the rules actually make sense. I'm going to refer to that article like a bit of the New Statesman. Quite frankly, George Osborne made up a whole series of rules which was in some ways contradictory, but they sold us political story that got the Tories re-elected in 2015, and it was very effective economically and from the directed at the public sector. It was terrible because basically Osborne said, we'll have terribly low interest rates. People can, the private sector can borrow as much and people can borrow as much, but we'll have austerity for everything else. And that didn't work well enough in terms of improving the economy. So the fiscal rules that he had didn't work. And I'm worried that the obsession with fiscal rules now, given that we have a change situation, even in the months after we've been in government, that will stymie our ability to do things. The Germans are already saying that, for example, in terms of defence spending, they are abandoning their normal fiscal conservatism because they know they need to do more. We've chosen to take it out of the international aid budget, which is possibly not the smartest way of dealing with the need to increase defence spending. So I think there will have to be some looking at rules over time, because the other thing, I think, making adjustments to your spending plans within months and looking at a forecast that's 3 years down the line. I mean, nobody budgets like that. And I think you'll set a hostage to fortune if you keep doing that, because it'll just set up more speculation about what you're going to do. You have to be brutally honest and say, what we had originally proposed, we can't continue to do. So, I mean, the test will come with the spending review in the summer, what comes out of that, as to whether the Chancellor is willing to address some of those longer term issues that will need addressing, like local government financing, for example. So we'll have to wait and see. I don't have a crystal ball, and I'm not in it.
No, indeed. Not fair to put.
I can comment on it from a perspective. But a Labour government has got to be like a Labour government. We've got to be on the side of ordinary people, and we've got to try and make their lives better. If we can't do that, then we're not doing a very good job, in my view.
No, I think, and it's an interesting challenge as an ex-Conservative member who was deeply disillusioned with everything after 2019, because, in my opinion, we stopped being Conservative. I am watching with interest a Labour government that, from a personal perspective, doesn't really look as Labour as I thought it would do. So, as you say, wait and see being the only option. And
so, some interesting conclusions there from Graham of his report card, and a slightly different take on things regarding to the mayor making. What are your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, I think if we look at it, I guess it is that piece where, if we look at mayor making, Graham Heaney, and we probably should say, I don't think we said, so Graham Heaney is the deputy leader for Labour, and George is the leader of Portsmouth Independents Party, just in case there's any confusion, because obviously we know them both. So just want to make sure that any listeners know who they are.
Good point.
But yeah, from that perspective, I think, Graham's perspective was that, mayor making is a vote. PIP lost the vote. Probably that he saw it as a stomping off in high dudgeon. Whereas I think, George's perspective is that almost the mayor making isn't or shouldn't be, or there's a kind of a kind of mutual agreement that it is kind of shared about, and it's clear that PIP feel that I don't know what the gender neutral thing of a gentleman's agreement has not been fulfilled, which is why they did what they did. How did you see it, having heard both sides of the coin?
Yeah, I think George's explanation seemed to talk about there being previous years where Councillor Simpson, the PIP councillor in Hilsey, had expressed interest and had been overlooked, and they'd also reached out to try and do a joint ticket, including Councillor Adeniran for the Labour councillor in Charles Dickens. But that seems to have kind of been overwhelmed by some sort of other conversation or agreement that's taken place elsewhere, or just the other parties kind of voted a different way. It's kind of it kind of seems like a difficult one to kind of pull apart. I mean, I think George is also kind of mentioning the last three mayors have been so we've got so we've got Abdul Qadir, who's the deputy mayor, so he'll be the mayor next year. We've got Gerald Vernon, who's a Lib Dem. We've got Gerald Vernon Jackson, who's the mayor this year, who was the deputy last year. And last year the mayor was Jason Frizakali. And the previous year the mayor was Tom Coles from Labour. So, so it does seem there's been a bit of a run of Lib Dem. Is that kind of what he's expressing disquiet about with regards to that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a ceremonial position. We accept, I think people accept that, but there's an awful lot of hard work involved, and it almost has felt like historically it was an honour bestowed after time served, and again it was about people having the time to do it, and I guess, Councillor Kadir has not been a councillor for an awfully long time. I don't think he's held any high profile cabinet positions. So it does seem a little bit, from an outsider, a bit of a strange choice, not to say that he won't do a fine job of it. And, as I say, I think, that any deal that George alluded to that's done in smoky back rooms, we always have a little bit of a wonder about, exactly what went on. So yeah, again, not ideal. I don't think it was, there weren't placards and people shouting outside. So it's probably that thing that almost apart from the likes of ourselves and people who follow local politics really closely, I'm fairly sure nobody noticed.
I mean, other than the 9 empty chairs on the stage, but
yeah, but even so,
yeah. So, yeah. I mean, it's just kind of one of those kind of weird things. In one sense, yes, it's a ceremonial role, but it does have an importance in the sense of being that spokesperson for the city, and there's a lot more to it than cutting a ribbon and opening supermarkets and things like that. So as the relationships with those other cities have kind of borne out, there's a lot of that global relationship with Portsmouth. Obviously, we're a maritime city, so
I guess
lots to kind of chew over, and who knows what's going to end up happening after the local government reorganisation when we've got an elected mayor.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Do we still have a city mayor? Does that work? I don't know.
Who knows? I mean, the other thing that I guess is that it's locked at 9-all, and George has bowed and allowed Charlotte through, but only potentially till July, because either the officers will come back with some zany style way of sorting it out, or will it still be 9-all in July?
Who knows? We'll have to keep our eyes peeled.
Absolutely. No, we will keep a close eye and watch on that. But yeah, I if I know anything about local Portsmouth politics, it won't be a straight path. I think we can guarantee that. Yeah,
there's bound to be something around the corner, isn't there? I mean, we aren't due any local elections until next May. They were originally going to be all-up elections because of boundary reviews, but that's now not happening. They're just going to be 1 seat per ward elections because of the ongoing devolution and local government reorganisation that's kind of happening. So who knows? But if you want to kind of stay abreast of it, a really good way to do that and to take part in a conversation about what's happening in local politics, local and national politics that affects Portsmouth. That's the Portsmouth in the UK, not some of the other ones. Then please do like, follow, subscribe, comment. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook, and do remember to follow us if you're listening to us just as the podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a review. They're almost as good as you sending us just tea and biscuits.
Yeah, we'll take that.
We'd like those.
So I guess we end.
We'll take that.
I guess we end today's episode by saying there are almost certainly stranger things to come. You've been listening to the Pompey Politics Podcast. I've been Ian Tiny Morris.
And I've been Simon Sainsbury. Thank you very much to our interview guests, which were Councillor Graham Heaney, as you said, the Deputy Leader of the Labour Group on Portsmouth City Council, and Councillor George Madgwick, the Leader of Portsmouth Independents Party on Portsmouth City Council. And do join us next week at 6:27 when we'll be asking whether school-age children should be banned from social media or stopped from having smartphones entirely, and because of the effect that that's having on them and their education. So do join us next week when we talk about that. Don't forget to like, follow and comment on Facebook, or comment and subscribe on YouTube. Find us on all the social media platforms: Facebook, X, YouTube, Threads, LinkedIn.